Allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Mrs. Rossmarin, may we please have the roll call?
Mr. Arnold. Mrs. Fenderbosch.
Here.
Ms. Gentry.
Here.
Mr. Koss.
Here.
Mr. Shamir.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Zuber.
Here.
Mayor Spetzel.
Here.
Law Director Ebert.
Here.
Finance Director Crossie. Here. Public Works Director Liskovic.
Here.
Thank you. Are there any objections to Mr. Arnold's absence? He's on family vacation this evening. Seeing none, we will go forward then with legislation. First, there will be an appointment of the police officer. Mrs. Rossmarin, please read by title only, ordinance number 25-63.
An ordinance confirming the appointment of Brian Kovalek as police officer in the police department and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you. At this time, I would make a motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings.
Mrs. Rossmarin?
Mr. Zuber.
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosch.
Yes.
Ms. Gentry.
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
Mr. Shamir.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Thank you. At this time, I would move for passage of temporary or of ordinance number 25-63 as an emergency measure.
In discussion?
Yes, I'll pass that on to the mayor.
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. I'm happy to introduce Mr. Brian Kovalek. He's here to be sworn in with the police officer. Brian is a 2012 graduate of Westlake High School. He received an Associates of Applied Science in Justice Systems Police Science major from Lorain County Community College in 2017. Brian also graduated from the Cleveland Police Academy in 2019 and worked for Cleveland PD until June of 2022. From June of 22 till current, he's employed with the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Office. Prior to his 6 years of law enforcement experience, Brian worked at loss prevention at both Sears and Kohl's from November 2015 to June of 2018. Brian was assigned to the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Office Detective Bureau and worked in the offender unit. He has with him his wife Star, and his daughter Nicole is somewhere in the back. So we're happy to have him, and a great addition again to our department.
Thank you. Mrs. Rossmarin, the roll call.
Mr. Zuber.
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosch.
Yes.
Ms. Gentry.
Yes.
Mr. Koss.
Yes.
Mr. Shamir.
Yes.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. It has passed. Now is the swearing-in ceremony. Mr. Mayor?
If anybody wants to get up to get a better shot, feel free to come up, move around.
Come on, Nicole.
Maybe that wasn't the right term. Better camera angle. All right. Good? Good. All right. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Brian Kovalek,
You undersigned. Do solemnly swear
solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and the laws and ordinances of the City of Avon Lake,
and the laws and ordinances of the City of Avon Lake,
and
and
that I will faithfully,
that I will faithfully,
honestly,
honestly,
and impartially
and impartially
discharge the duties of police officer
discharge the duties of police officer
in
in
the Avon Lake Police Department
the Avon Lake Police Department
during my continuance in said position.
during my continuance in said position.
Congratulations. You have a badge to be pinned on here?
Stay up here.
And now introduce Mr. Brian Officer Kovalek.
Yes.
Thank you all for coming out. It's always great to see you. Thank you guys out there. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
You get to sign.
You got to sign
yeah.
three documents here.
Well, that takes practice.
Quick.
Thank you very much. All right, congratulations again. Thank you. Thank you all for coming down. You don't have to stick around if you don't want to. We got a long agenda, but go out to dinner.
The elevator at the far end of the room, the hallway does work.
Good look.
Okay, we're going to move along now to correspondence. And before I turn over to Mrs. Ross Marin, I just wanted to state that oftentimes members of council and the administration receive anonymous letters or letters with a creative email address, but they're not identifying themselves, and we don't respond to those. When a resident really wants to contact us, please, contact us with your name and a way to phone you back or to email you back with a true email address. Thank you. Mrs. Rossmarin, are there any correspondence pieces you'd like to share?
No, I don't have any to report.
Nothing tonight. Anybody else have anything that has come in? Okay, then we're going to go on now to our reports. Mayor?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to announce that 4 days ago, we had an important anniversary. It was the 95th anniversary of the Avon on the Lake, I'll make sure I get that right, Avon on the Lake Garden Club. Madam President, would you like to introduce our distinguished guests here?
Yes, come on up to the podium. I'm going to introduce the president and the vice president of the Avon Lake Garden Club, Barbara Peterson, and we have Camber Herman, and no, they are not in their 90s, but they are very, very active, and they assist the community. You might want to just give a brief concept of where the ladies are working in the city.
Yes, we currently have 79 members in our club. Most of our members join after they retire, or they move to the area after they retire. We do have some members that live in other communities nearby, but our main job is to take care of the 10 civic gardens that we have around the city. This takes up a lot of our funding that we get from our annual fundraiser, which is our big plant sale that's coming up on May the 10th. The funds that we get from this plant sale are what we use to purchase the plants that we put into the civic gardens, and also to be able to purchase trees to donate to the city. And I just wanted to say thank you very much to the city of Avon Lake for everything you do to help us out. And a special thank you to our Public Works, because he has to work with us and in tandem also, and we definitely appreciate all the work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies, for coming down.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to have them. Kind of segueing right into that, one of the agenda items tonight is the donation of some trees that are going to be planted in Walker Road Park on Arbor Day, which is Friday, April 25th. Everybody's invited to attend that if you'd like. I believe it's at 12:30.
12:30.
And that'll be at Walker Road Park, and we'll be planting the trees donated by the Avon on the Lake Garden Club. The Arbor Day Foundation also has recognized Avon Lake, and we were awarded in 2024 the Tree City USA for the 33rd consecutive year. And we also received our third straight growth award. So a lot of good things happening with our trees. The other thing I want to mention is Kimball has been picking up yard waste since March 1st. If you have one of their yard waste containers, they are picking that up now. You can throw any of your smaller branches and leaves in that. We've noticed that some people have put leaves out to the curb. Again, we do not run a leaf truck except in the fall, so we would encourage you to pick those leaves up and throw them in bags or in your waste container, or I'm sorry, your yard waste container. Also want to remind everybody that there is a primary special election on May 6th. If you have not registered to vote, the deadline is April 7th. We encourage you to get out and vote. One of the items on the that are on the ballot this year is a tax levy for Avon Lake. It's a 1.5 mil renewal levy. It is not new taxes. That brings in about $1 million per year to our general fund. This is used to provide for police, fire, and infrastructure to the community. It represents a little over 4% of our total general fund, so it's an important part of our operational budget. Again, this is not a tax increase, this is a renewal, so whatever you paid in '25 is what you would pay for the next 5 years of this 5-year renewal. So we encourage you to, we'll have information on our website, encourage you to look at that. If you have any questions, please contact us. Quick power plant demolition update. You'll see that there's some fencing going up along the south side of the remaining building, adjacent to Lake Road. I also want to note that the Artifacts Committee has been formed, and they'll be working on removing and preserving the sandstone lintel that is above the main entrance to the building, as well as some of the surrounding stonework. And I want to thank John Liskovic for his crew. I believe you did some shoring up today in preparation for that. And there's other items that have been collected as part of that Artifacts Committee. So we do appreciate them recognizing the importance of the power plant and keeping some of the artifacts from that available for Avon Lake. And this is a cooperative effort between the City of Avon Lake, the Avon Lake Historical Society, and Avon Lake Environmental Redevelopment Group. The first week of April, let me see here. The first week of April, they'll be starting the demolition of that admin building. They anticipate that going through June, and with debris removal by the end of June for that administrative building. The implosion debris is projected to all be removed by the end of May. So I just want to provide a little update on where we are with the power plant demolition and remediation. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Mayor? Mr. Cos?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Mayor, I would add also with that Artifacts group, also the Avon Lake Public Library has been a big partner in that. They're storing a lot of this material there, and also the Avon Lake Historical Preservation Commission. But
Thank
your
you.
point is dead on, that it's a lot of these groups coming together with a person or two from each group, working collaboratively to save as much as we can.
Yep. Thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah, a great cooperative effort amongst everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're going to go back in our agenda. I happened to skip over the approval of the minutes. We're going to approve them separately. First is the December 16th, 2024 minutes. You've received a copy of them. Are there any additions or deletions? Seeing none, they will stand as published and approved. February 10th, 2025. You've all received a copy of them. Any changes? Seeing none, they will stand as published and they will have been approved. Thank you. Now we're going to go on to the Council President's report. The next CCM is going to be the 7th of April at 7 p.m. in these chambers. The next council meeting is going to be April the, is that the 17th? The 12th. Let me look at it. 14th, I'm sorry, the 14th. And they will be in these chambers. Are there any questions for Council President? Okay, we're going to move on then to the Law Director.
Not the mayor first?
Oh, he already did his.
Okay. No report this evening, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The Finance Director.
No report this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Public Works Director.
I do have a few things to cover this evening. First and foremost, tomorrow, the intersection of Jaycox and Walker will finally be receiving the cabinet upgrades to round out the installation of the Pathmaster preemption project. During those upgrades tomorrow, that intersection, the traffic lights will be down. There will be officers out there conducting traffic, but please prepare accordingly for that. And they will be moving vehicles through that intersection best as they can.
And that's from 8 till 4?
Yeah, I'd speculate, yeah, probably somewhere around 7:30, 8 o'clock till 4. The intersection will not be down the whole duration of that, but there will be, the signals will be out for a period of time during
Might be a
the
good
process.
intersection to avoid.
Yes. Next up, Columbia Gas is doing some preliminary field work field survey work for a main replacement project on Curtis and Belmar. You'll start to see survey stakes, underground utilities, flagging, and stuff like that. I have just a couple more things to review on that, but I'll be getting information over to the Communications and Technology Department to put on the website regarding more details on that project. There has not been a date for construction of the project set yet. That'll be coming, and as soon as we get that, I'll make sure everybody's aware. Next up is sand dredging, the yearly sand dredging that is conducted at the Miller Road Park and at the boat ramp. We met with the contractor last week, talked about schedule. That is a very highly weather dependent schedule based on the wave action on the lake, since they will be working off of barges. But at least their projection is they'd like to get in here and start working on it at the end of this week, beginning of next week. They have requested, if they get in, and to move that project along, to work on weekends, and understanding that we do have a timeline to make sure that we have it done by. It makes sense to allow them to get their work done and try to hit that deadline, which is April 13th. Again, weather dependent, wave action is not our friend on this one, but we've been able to have it done successfully and make that deadline. Last couple updates revolve around the Alps project. Phase 1, contractor is moving right along, working on preparation steps right now for the multi-season sledding areas. Have completed the seating walls and the concrete work. Still on track to hit their April 18th deadline. Alps Phase 2, we received bids last Thursday, opened them publicly, and Kimley Horn has reviewed them. We will be conducting our review of their recommendations and be bringing the results of that to council in the very, very near future. And that is all I have this evening.
Thank you. Any questions for our Public Works Director? Okay. Seeing none, we're going to go on now to our standing committees. Oh, I'm sorry. We already went to Finance? No. Yeah, already went to Finance. Okay, we're good. We're going to go on to standing committees. And council people, if you have anything that's coming up for suspension of the rule, please explain the reason why. Okay? The very first one will be Building and Utilities.
Our next meeting will be April 16th at 6 p.m. in council chambers. And just for those who have been looking for it, the contractor list is now up on the website for the registered contractors for 2025.
Very good. Any questions for Building and Utilities? Seeing none, we're going to go on to Communication, Environmental, Recreational Programming. Mr. Shamir?
Yes, we just held our meeting prior to this meeting today. A number of issues were discussed. First of all, as Mr. Liskovic mentioned, the Alps project Phase 1 will be handed over mid-April, weather permitting, and it should be ready for use sometimes during that first week in May, again, weather permitting. The next Environmental Affairs Advisory Board meeting will be April 2nd. That's Wednesday, April 2nd, at the Lake House. And a number of issues were discussed with respect to the EAB to include a number of openings which will be further advertised. I know that we've received some interest and resumes for those posts. So the EAB has 3 seats that are open, and those are resident member seats. Now, during the meeting, we mentioned a few items that seems to have caused some confusion, maybe on my part, maybe on others. One was the power plant appraisal, and the other is the power plant demolition after report. And I'm going to take about 3 minutes and go through, if I may, a quick slide presentation that will hopefully clarify the issue. Earlier this month, late last month, I
made an assessment based on some information that I had received. This was a December 19th, 2022 property valuation that was done for a property that Avon Lake Regional Water had looked to purchase. The property is effectively right,
This way.
it's right there. So that's the power plant, and this is the property that's in question. And the property was 0.3 acres with a value of $205,000. Now, when you extrapolate that number, for an acre, that's $661,000, and that would work on an extrapolation for 23 acres of roughly $15 million. Now, these are numbers and valuations that I have received. I just made the projection and took it out. I mean, I can't say one way or another, but this is the only analog that was available, and I utilized that analog to make this assessment, which correlated with the $15 million that was put into the development agreement. Now, this area, so if you look at the green space, this is the space that is in question and the 23 acres that's discussed. The next item is the power plant implosion of December 19th. Now, these are reports that were generated based on a air dispersion modeling that was commissioned by the city. The city commissioned this report, this study, and the study effectively came up with recommendations that as long as the winds were blowing from the south to the north, the implosion could move forward. However, if it was not, the implosion should be rescheduled. So at the time of implosion, the winds were not moving from the south to the north, they were coming in from the north to the south. This is the wind direction at 4 a.m., this is the wind direction at 7 a.m. These are the wind data. Now, again, this is the wind finder data for those two sets of data, again showing that the winds are blowing from the north west to the southeast, and then from the north to the south. So the direction of the wind was generally from northwest to southeast and from north to south at the time of implosion. So these are some clips off of a drone footage that I received from a resident. And what you do see is, as the implosion takes place, the plume moves south, southeast. And this has been the question. And now what we have discussed is we will be having meetings with Verdantist, who did the monitoring for the air at the time of implosion, as well as the air dispersion modeling. Now, this is one end of it. This is looking from the south, looking north. And again, what's also good to understand is that the weather is clear. There is no clouds or no precipitation at the time of the implosion. And what you do see is, at the time of the implosion, the plume is moving south, southeast. So this indicates some of the potential receptors. We have school, Westview Elementary, and Troy School here. And I received a phone call the following day from a resident that lives on Chatham Drive. Now, this is what followed and was sent to me by the resident that lives on Chatham Drive. This was at 5:40 in the morning at the time of implosion, past implosion, and this was with no precipitation. We had this condition, which is dust in the air. This is the data I've covered the address, but that information is available. And this is the soot that remained after that implosion on furniture covers. So these two issues have come up. I have received a number of comments and phone calls with respect to these items. This information is available for whoever that wants it. I will leave another copy with city administration and council as well. And that's effectively my report on CERP. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Shamir, from the CERT meeting that I was at right before this meeting, you are expecting to have Verdantis and Mr. Davis and ALERG respond and be at the next economic development meeting or at your meeting?
Yes, I expect them to be, Mr. Mayor informed me that they will be at the next economic development meeting, but I would like to have a technical discussion with Verdantis and Mr. Gross on this issue specifically. So that is not just a general meeting. I would like to have a technical discussion on their findings and what they targeted and what was found.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, in response?
Yeah, we could just contact Steve Gross and set
Thank
that
you.
up.
I will call him then. Thanks.
Yep.
Thank you. Anybody else on this report? Okay, thank you, sir. We're going to move on then. Mr. Arnold is not here. He's the chair of the Economic Development meeting. He wanted to make sure that I mentioned that the next meeting, as has been mentioned a moment ago, will be April the 7th at 5:30 p.m. in these chambers. Okay, the very next meeting, Mr. Zuber is Finance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Finance Committee will be meeting on April 21st at 5 p.m. Here in the council chambers. That will be our next meeting. We have several items on the agenda. First is the motion for the RFQs for the owner's rep for the new fire station. We also have a second reading for a donation to the village project. This will be the second reading, then we will be removing it until after we do a budget adjustment on that. And we do have a suspension of the rule on the issuance of the bonds for the 2 fire trucks. The reason we're suspending the rule is so that we can move forward and receive I think it's like over $200,000 worth of discounts for the prepayment for those 2 trucks. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Zuber? Seeing none, we're going to move along now to Mr. Smith with Human Resources.
Thank you, Madam President. The Human Resources Committee will meet on April 14th at 6 o'clock prior to the council meeting that day. We also have several ordinances on the agenda tonight. One is establishing the qualifications of the city engineer. That is on as a suspension of the rules, but not as an emergency. We also have the ordinance regarding the non-bargaining unit personnel. We're going to be suspending the rule and declaring an emergency on that so that we can get everybody paid up to date for the commitments that we have relative to those folks. The third one is a ordinance confirming the mayor's appointment of Robert Rua. That's also a suspension of the rule and emergency, so we can get him into his position. I think he was here, and I think he introduced himself to everybody tonight, and it was nice to meet him. And, oh, he's back in there. Okay. Hard at work already. Well, good. And then the fourth item, we already had the police officer. And then the next one is we're hiring Brian Mahoney. We'll be suspending the rule and doing an emergency so that the senior program manager can get moving and without missing a skip to help our seniors down at out at the senior center. So that's all that I have to report for you tonight.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Smith? Seeing none, we're going to move along now to Mr. Cos with Public Safety and Health.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. The Public Safety and Health Committee met on March the 18th here in the council chambers. However, I want to start my report by talking about the meeting that took place just prior to that. And we held a town hall style meeting at 6 p.m. prior to the safety committee meeting, and that was to deal with one topic and one topic only, and that was the traffic impact analysis for the southeast quadrant part of the city that we've talked about quite a bit. Specifically the neighborhoods and streets of Hanford, Liberty Rose, and that general area. So we invited the residents of those streets and those neighborhoods in here to City Hall, and we had a very loose and productive conversation with the residents, and also Trans Systems, which is the company that is going to be performing the traffic analysis for the city. So Trans Systems, their representatives were here. They were able to answer direct questions from the residents. Members of council, members of the administration were also here, could also answer questions from the residents. But mainly it was a listening type of meeting where we wanted to hear what their concerns are, and they had a copy of the scope as well, and what they would like to see in addition to what was in that scope of work. So I thought it was a very productive meeting. I know everybody was taking a lot of notes during that. And we finished that meeting just right about 7 o'clock and went right into the safety committee meeting. And that was one of the first items that we had talked about in the safety committee. And where we left off with the process of how this is going to happen with this traffic analysis study, we moved it out of committee. There was so much information that was brought to the committee, we couldn't adopt a motion to accept or deny everything that was being said by residents or suggested by members of council or the administration. So what we did was we worded the motion to move it out of council that we were adopting this and moving it forward to get the ball rolling on it. And we were adopting the concept of what the scope of work was, and that we would incorporate as much as practicable into the final version of it. So that was the language that we used, and what we're going to try to do, what the goal is here, is to get this scope of work finalized and passed through City Council by no later than Monday, April the 14th. So that means that we want to take it to, in a final version, or as close to it as we can, to the CCM on Monday, April the 7th. By passing it no later than the 14th, it will allow Trans Systems to begin their studies, their traffic counts, and do all of that while school is still in session, prior to people getting off of, for summer vacations and getting out of town for weeks at a time. So we wanted to have the best chance to capture what the true impact of the traffic is currently there. And also they're going to look at some projections of what happens if certain streets close and certain streets remain open. So there's a lot of variables in there, but I was very happy with how that went forward. And when I get done with this, I'll ask if the mayor has any other input on that, because I know that the next step, he's going to talk to Trans Systems with members of the administration and try to figure out how we incorporate a lot of these things that were said into that scope. So then we went into the safety committee meeting, and the first item that we had on that was Dr. Rudy Breglia gave a presentation. Folks know Dr. Breglia. He is a strong advocate for seatbelts on school buses and student safety. And every time that he is down in Columbus and he has new information, he has an open invitation to come to safety committee and update us on what's going on. And Rudy did a tremendous presentation on a House Bill 3, that is currently in the state legislature. There's actually a competing Senate bill, but the House bill we liked a little bit better. But he talked us through what some of the components of this House bill are, and I'll go over briefly what they are. A $25 million grant program for school bus safety equipment, including increased illuminated signage, crossing arms, ground wash lights, lane departure warning systems, electronic warnings, stability, and lap shoulder seat belts. So the lap shoulder seat belts, that's obviously the most talked about portion of this, but the first component would allow $25 million for the state, for school districts to apply for these safety upgrades. And I think it's important to note that that is not a mandate to install seat belts, that if a school district decides to go that route, this would have funding available that they could do that, so it would not be cost prohibitive for them to do so. Also, the second component is increase in illegal school bus passings going around the stop arm. So they're talking about increased penalties for that. Hopefully they bring them up to what the city of Avon Lake is already doing, but I'm glad to see that the state is taking that seriously and are looking to increase penalties at the state level. Funds for public awareness, campaigns and regulations with Stop School Bus, so just information campaigns to educate people on what the rules are when it comes to school bus passing and kids getting on and off. And then finally, funds for cameras on school buses to help with the prosecution of violations. Again, very proud that the city of Avon Lake is already a step ahead of this, and we have cameras on all of our school buses. But the four components of that, I hope that this passes. It's a bipartisan bill down in the legislature, so hopefully this passes. And the committee voted a resolution of support for this, so by a 3-0 vote. So we hope to have, in a couple of weeks, we'll have a first reading on this, and we're going to have like I said, a resolution to support School Bus Safety Act HB 3. We also talked again about the traffic impact analysis. I went over that already. We passed the motion out of there that basically adopted it and moved it out of council or out of committee with the idea that we were going to take as much as we can and try to put that into the final product. We talked about the EMS billing rates. Chief Betza did a presentation on that. The EMS billing rates have not been changed since I think 2019, if I'm correct. So he had some recommendations on the rate change on that. I had asked for some additional information on it prior to moving it out of committee, and the chief was going to get that. He has subsequently got that information to me. I'll be passing it on to the members of the committee and the council as well too. So we'll be moving forward with a recommendation on that in the weeks to come. And that is all I have, Madam President.
Thank you.
And
Is
if
there
Mr.
further
Mayor wanted to
discussion
talk
from Mr.
about,
Mayor?
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think Councilman Kaz did a great job of summarizing the meeting. It was a very productive meeting. I thought we used up our time completely. Residents had an opportunity to speak. We took a lot of notes. The idea is to hopefully have a meeting set up with Trans Systems by Friday to incorporate as much as we can into the scope. That'll give them time to develop a scope and a proposal for us, which we will bring to the CCM on the 7th to get this thing moving.
Right, and what else was also very strong about the meeting, Mr. Kaz, was that there were two individuals from Trans that came here, and they listened to the residents and heard from the residents what the challenges were. And the residents came from all different parts of that quadrant. It wasn't just right on Lear Road. And I thought that it was important for the consultant to hear from the residents the challenges that they have before them. Any further comments on Mr. Kaz's meeting? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move along now to the public service meeting. So last public service meeting was March the 5th, and it was quite extensive. And tonight we have 4 items that are going to be under motion. And when we come to those, I will go into explaining them. There are 6 items that we're going to ask for suspension of the rule on, and I will go through them now. The first one has to do with a resolution authorizing the mayor to submit an application for the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, ODNR, Division of Forestry, for a grant. And the reason why we're doing this is that, you've heard the term to be shovel ready, right? So we want to be able to pass this and to put everything into place. So when the funding is there, because we've been told the funding is coming, they keep moving that date out, that we will be one of the first to apply. Because the way that the grant works is first in, first money is out. They don't wait for everybody to apply at a deadline and then they select. So that's something that we're going to be doing tonight. And the necessity for the emergency measure is the deadline. Thank you. The next one that has suspension of the rule emergency passage has to do with a resolution in support of State Issue 2. This is renewal of the State Capital Improvement Program, and it's going to be on the March 6th ballot. It is not a tax. Again, it is not a tax. It's simply when the residents vote, and I hope that they vote for it, as they have since 1987, that they vote for it, and it is instructing the state to use the funds that the state has toward infrastructure bonds. And here in Avon Lake, we've been using it just recently down Walker Road. So we get 300,000, 400,000, 300,000, on and on, to do segments down Walker Road. And I will go more into the detail later. But the reason why it needs to be voted on tonight, excuse me, is that it needs to be sent on to the other coordinating groups so that it can be included in the information that goes out to the residents all over Ohio about why this needs to be passed. We're working with District 9. We're in the District 9 area, and the Assistant County Engineer is collecting all of these resolutions from all of these cities and forwarding it on to the state. So I'll go
Madam
into more.
Chair?
Yes.
Could you give the date of the election again on that?
Yes, thank you. It's it's issue 2, and it's the May 6th election, May 6th, 2025. Don't miss it. You can vote from home now. Okay. The next item that we're going to have suspension of the rule emergency passage is going to be an ordinance authorizing the purchase of an International 607 chassis cab, and it's for the Public Works Department. And the reason why we are declaring an emergency is that this is through ODOT contract 023-26, and it is something that we need to be in the books and on, so that when it is purchased from Rush Truck Centers of Cincinnati, Ohio, that it is created in the year 2024. And we'll be discussing more about that down the road. There's a list, and the first ones and the first ones that are created. The next one that we're going to have suspension of the rule emergency passage is an ordinance authorizing payment for software support and licensing of OpenGov, citizen services, and cartograph asset management systems. And we are going to be declaring an emergency. And this has nothing to do with the way that our city operates. It has to do with how this particular company invoices for that work. And it's actually for work that began the first of the month, because they end their contracts in February. This is the second year of a 5-year contract with them, and we need to be passing this forward so that we can put our check in the mail, as they say, prior to their quick deadline, even though we just received their invoice, so that they don't charge us additional penalties. Thank you, or any penalties. Right now, there are no penalties. The next one's going to have suspension of the rule is an ordinance providing legal representation with a purchase agreement between the City of Avon Lake and Avon Lake Redevelopment Group, which we know as ALERG, and declaring an emergency. And what this is that back when the power plant was first decommissioned, and then they were purchased, and then we moved along, we had a DA. Todd Davis came to us and gave us a listing of what he thought might be the range of all the expenses, whether it was from Verdantis, which would be the environmental, or if it would be from legal help, not him, but from other legal help in the purchase and the acquisition of the property, and on and on and on. And part of that DA states that whatever the expenses are, they will be reimbursed, they will be paid back to us. And so we are in the need of putting this into place now. The emergency measure is the necessity of the city with legal representation regarding the acquisition of real property. So that needs to occur, and we'll talk more about it when we're talking on that particular item. And the last one that I told you it was a busy meeting. The last one that we have is that an ordinance amending ordinance number 24-78 and declaring an emergency. And what this is that last year we purchased from Valley Freightliner Inc., it was a bid in Parma, Ohio, through Sourcewell, which is the cooperative purchasing organization, 2 Western Star 47X chassis cabs. And it was in the amount, we thought, of $513,540. And we went to Huntington to be able to have a lease agreement. By the time all that work was done, the interest rates changed, and the amount now is $596,975.58. And the annual lease would be, instead of $96,639,075, it's $99,495.93. So this needs to take place so that we can update our financing, our books. Is there any questions over the public service meeting? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on now to Mr. Smith with planning. Do you have any reports, sir?
Meeting, which would be April 1st,
Thank
I
you.
believe. Yes, thank you.
First Tuesday of the month, right. Okay, any questions for Mr. Smith? All right, seeing none. And I want to back up. So there's been some comments about the last planning commission meeting being canceled, and people wanted to know why. And my understanding is, and you can verify this, Mr. Mayor, the reason it was canceled was that there weren't projects that were ready to come. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes. There were no projects ready to be put before Planning Commission.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, anything else?
That's correct. There was no agenda items for the meeting.
Okay, very good. Thank you, sir. Okay, zoning board, Mr. Mayor.
The next meeting of the zoning board is this Wednesday. There are 5 cases on the docket.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Mayor? Seeing none, we're going to go on to Mr. Shamir with Parks and Rec Commission.
Nothing to report.
Sir, thank you. Next are special committees. Any special committee reports? Okay, I'm going to give one for the Tree Commission. The Tree Commission is going to meet next on April the 9th at 6 p.m. at the old firehouse. And it's already been reported that Arbor Day is April the 25th. We invite everybody out at Walker Road Park, go to the south part area down where the turnaround is by the detention area. And that's where Bay Village is going to be joining us. They're planting northern catalpa trees. We're giving away free catalpa tree seeds there that day. And the Garden Club has purchased for the city 3 of the shagbark hickory trees. And it will be a lovely event, and you're all invited to it. There's also on April the 2nd, it's going to be the North Coast Urban Forestry Conference. And it's going to be an all-day conference over on the Far East Side at Cuyahoga County Community College. And we have a number of our employees, along with, I believe, Mr. Liskovic, you will be there. I know I'm going to be there. The Tree Commission will be there. It's a great learning conference at that point. But we will actually be coming home, Mr. Mayor, with the awards that the city has earned. And that's all I have for my report for now. Okay. At that point, we're going to go on to audience participation. We're at that point in our meeting when you can come forward and speak on any topic that's on tonight's agenda, and you have 3 minutes. Speak to me, and we will be timing it. Up at the podium, your light will turn to yellow when your 3 minutes is almost up. So come forward if you'd like to speak on any topic on tonight's agenda. Okay, we have Mr. Phillips is coming forward. Come on up, sir. Greetings.
Good evening, Gerald Phillips, Avon Lake, a concerned citizen. I want to talk about mismanagement of finances and waste of taxpayers' dollars. First item on the agenda is the owner's representative for the fire department project. We spoke about this previously. I believe it's $400,000. We have a finance director whose job is to monitoring the projects, authorize the expenditure of money, which is a duplication of what the fire chief said this position is. We have a public works director who's supposed to be in charge of public projects, like the fire station. That's part of his duties. We're going to hire an engineer who's supposed to be in charge of public improvement projects and other items. That's part of his duties. We have an architect who's going to be hired for that job, who's going to deal with the bids and the specifications, which is covered by this project. We don't need this position. This is a waste of money. Clearly a waste of money. Mr. Zuber indicated that. So you shouldn't even consider it. You know, if the finance director, the public works director, the engineer, and the architect's not doing their job, then why do we have to hire somebody? Let's get people in those positions that can do the job and save $400,000. Let's talk about ordinance 2559, an ordinance that we shouldn't even be here, okay? Last February, we had 3 candidates who could have been hired as a engineer and public works director. We had 51 applications. The only 2 people that read them is the mayor and the law director. The only person that voted against this position is Mr. Shamir. None of you read the 51 applications. We had an individual, okay, who was an engineer with 9 years of experience, earning $100,000, who applied and should have been hired and could have taken that position, and we wouldn't even be here looking for an engineer. But no, we had to hire somebody, Mr. Likovic, who doesn't even qualify under your ordinance 24-5 to be public works director, because he's supposed to have a bachelor's degree in public administration, organizational management, business, or civil engineer. He doesn't. He only has an associate's degree. Prime example of you hiring people, okay? He might be a nice person, but he's not qualified. And the fact he's not qualified is we got to hire an assistant public works director. We're looking at hiring a supervisor for the public works director. 3 people when we could have had 1 person to do both jobs, okay? Who was watching it? Everybody on council. Everybody was here. Miss Gentry was here. Mr. Shamir, everybody, although they were only here for a short time.
Anybody else like to come forward and speak on any topic on tonight's agenda? Good evening, Mr. Zimmerman.
Good evening. William Zimmerman. My concerns are 2572. The Burns-Ochner. Mr. Phillips has made references to the document in part of the agreement that was done then. Law director told me that it was a binding agreement, even though we were led to believe by Mr. Davis that it was not. I find that to be very troublesome. And now we're going back to Burns-Ochner. Same people who stood up here next to Mr. Davis when Miss Gentry asked, do we have an appraisal? And they said, well, that's part of the process. Yet we all know that there already was an appraisal. And they weren't identifying it and telling us about it. How can these people be trusted? This is fraud. Criminal act. How can they be trusted? Says that you have to have these communications in open public meetings. You guys went to executive session all the time with these people. It wasn't an open public meeting. It was closed. Didn't fill us in because there's no minutes, no notes. All these events have occurred, and we should have the opportunity to see them. This is very similar to the Brownfield Committee, who had 3 years worth of meetings and never took a minute. Another criminal act. So, my last statement would be in regards to 2573 and declaring that an emergency when we're spending an additional $83,000. When the price changes that much, does it have to go back out to bid? Should it go back out to bid? It's a lot of coin. $83,000. We're up to $600,000 on this purchase now. Somebody should be looking over that. Finance director? Somebody?
Anybody else like to come forward on any topic on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, then we're going to move forward. Thank you. Okay, at this point in time, we're going to go to motions. Mr. Zuber, will you lead us in the first motion, please?
I move to authorize the mayor to advertise for a request for qualifications for an owner's representative for the Avon Lake Fire Station.
In discussion.
This had passed out of the Finance Committee. It's the first of the process to look at building a new fire station. This is an owner's rep. It was a recommendation of both the police, or both the fire chief and the mayor, and in the meetings that we had in discussion on this, this is what we felt was best for the city to move forward in this particular process. This is only going out for qualifications. We still would have to approve this owner's rep in order to do this. We also had a meeting of a joint committee of both the safety committee and the finance committee, where one of these owners rep came in and talked to us a little bit about what they do exactly and how they would represent the city.
Right, and sir, do you want to speak a little bit to the owner's rep is an owner's rep that's specific for this type of a building, so they understand the industry that we're building for?
Right, that's correct. This would be based on the qualifications of this person or this entity, company that would come in, that they, when they give their qualifications to the mayor and the team that will be reviewing that, that would be part of what they would be looking at in particular, would be the fact that they have been involved in fire stations and the building of fire stations.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Yes, sir, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. As I stated when those folks were there, I still have questions about the need for this this type of a contract. This is only for RFQs though at this time, so I have no issue with sending it out, getting the RFQs, finding out what exactly someone's going to do and offer, so that I can evaluate the type of services and the costs involved in a reasonable fashion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Yes, sir, Mr. Zuber.
Just that when we had discussion with the last owner's rep, they had said that this would be about $100,000. That was their estimation of what their cost would be in order to represent the city.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Mr. Cos?
Yeah, thank you, Madam President. Mr. Mayor, when do you expect to close out, or what's the time frame on when we expect to have these the requests or the qualifications come in, and then what's your time frame on sorting through those and coming to a recommendation for council?
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. So we want to allow at least 3 weeks for responses. After the responses come in, we have a committee that would be set up to review those as they come in. And then based upon the scoring matrix, which is included in your RFQ, then we would bring that recommendation to council.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Shamir?
Will this be in place of a construction management contractor? Will there be any other contractor management activity that's going to be a part of this?
That question's directed to Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I can answer that. So typically in there's 3 delivery methods for construction projects in Ohio. Any one of those could have an owner's rep. But to answer your question directly, there would still be a construction manager under contract for this. And it depends on what method you use. If it's a construction manager at risk, there's a construction manager. If you have design, bid, build, there could be a construction manager. We don't use design build for these type of projects, so it really depends. And I think Mr. Smith noted it very well. I think what we want to do is take a look at what the owner's rep will provide us, make sure there would be no overlap with owner's reps and architects and construction managers and general contractors. I worded the RFQ to make sure that we're addressing those within the document. And so when we get those back, I think we need to take a close look at those and make sure that there is no overlap.
Thank you. Any further discussion from anyone? Yes, Mr. Zuber?
Just that, when I became chairman of the finance committee, I brought forward the fire station issue again. I know that there is some sour taste in some people's mouth, but we need to move forward on a new fire station. I think we all agree about that. As the mayor knows, and I say this often, the fire station was built when the mayor and I were attending Glearwood Junior High School. So I think we all realize that I think that there's probably twice as many people on shift at the fire department now than there were then when it first opened, and there's no doubt that we do need a new fire station, and we need to move forward, and that has been what I think that we need to do, and that's what I wanted to pursue as we move forward out of the finance committee, and that's why I started talking about this, and it's come to this point after several meetings and a lot of discussion, not only through council, but the administration, and several different meetings with also the fire chief. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further discussion? Okay, at this point, Mrs. Rossmarin in the roll.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. It is passed. The next one, I authorize the Public Works Director to advertise for bids for the Walker Road Phase 5 project. In discussion, I'm going to turn this over to John Liskovic, our Public Works Director, who's going to describe the project to us.
Thank you. So this would be, as stated, Phase 5, which would take us from the intersection of Moore to roughly 3,000 feet to the west of that. Included with this project is going to be resurfacing, widening to include some bike lanes through that stretch, and also necessary stormwater work that has been determined through field data and surveying.
And could you expand upon, Mr. Liskovic, the grant funds that are involved with this?
Absolutely.
And the loan, please?
Yes. So this project was applied for funding through Ohio Public Works Commission. We have received a grant and zero interest loan funding to put towards this project.
So $300,000 for a grant and $150,000 for a loan. This is the issue 2 monies that we were talking about earlier. Any further discussion from anyone? Mrs. Rossmarin, the roll.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you, this is passed. I move to accept the donation of $600 from Avon Lake Garden Club to purchase 3 Caria ovata shagbark hickory trees to be planted at Walker Road Park. The Garden Club for the last, you heard, 90-some years has been donating funds to the city of Avon Lake to purchase trees, and they're continuing with that project. They donated $600 this year for shagbark hickory trees. You might be wondering why, because those were the trees that were originally there that were taken out to create the overflow detention basin that was built there. Any further discussion? Mrs. Rossmarin, the roll to accept?
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. That too is passed. I move to authorize the Public Works Director to advertise for bids for the 2025 Crack Seal Program. Mr. Liskovic, will you explain the program?
Yes. This is our annual, one of our annual pavement preservation projects that we conduct. This year we're targeting the roads of Jaycox and Walker between Ambleside and Armour. And so that would have been what was formerly known as Walker Phase 1 and 2. And again, just a preventative preservation project to extend the life of our roads.
Right, and this is to contract out because we still are doing crack seal in-house. This is just to contract out. Any further discussion from anyone? Seeing none, Mrs. Rossmarin, the roll.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. This is passed. I move to accept a conditional gift of a howitzer artillery in Veterans Memorial Park from the United States Army. So there's some history here. So everyone knows down at Veterans Memorial Park, there is the gun that's down there. And through a lot of work with the Veterans of Foreign Wars, along with the American Legion, there was an agreement made to have that particular artillery there. Now we're at the point where there is not a Avon Lake Veterans of Foreign Wars, and the U.S. Army has a number of locations where cities want to have the artillery. So we've been placed in a wonderful position that we can accept this as a gift. I'm going to move it along to Mr. Mayor, who's going to go into more explanation.
Yes, thank you. So the artillery that is at Veterans Park, we've all seen it. That was actually a piece that was donated to the Avon Lake VFW. The Avon Lake VFW became defunct, therefore it became the property of the Avon VFW. In contacting them, they're happy with it being maintained there. They do not want it, they're seeking their own. And in Cheryl Ankley from the Army Donations Program Office contacted me, wanted to know if we want to take responsibility for it. And of course I said, yes, we don't want that piece moving. And so this is really just an agreement with the Army Donations Program to take responsibility for that artillery piece.
Thank you, sir. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Mrs. Ross Marin, the roll.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. This is passed. Now we're going to go on to legislation. This is the third reading. Mr. Codd, not yet. Mrs. Ross Marin, can you read by title only ordinance number 25-35?
An ordinance adopting the City of Avon Lake disaster plan.
Mr. Codd.
Thank you. I move for passage of ordinance number 25-35.
In discussion?
In discussion, this is the long-discussed update to the city's disaster plan. Specifically, there has been a lot of updates that have been done to this plan. I think everybody here has a copy. We'll keep a copy here on record or at City Hall. But this was a lot of work that was done by Fire Chief Jeremy Betza, and also with contributions as well too from the police chief as well. But Chief Betza really put a lot of time and effort into updating this plan. Includes organizational charts, personnel and department responsibilities, plan initiation guidelines, city department requirements and performances, mobilization sequence, outside agency contacts. There was a lot of work that was done, and I would be remiss if I forgot to also mention Stephanie Biggers and the staff over at our digital media department as well too, did a lot of work on this as well. This was a document that needed to be updated. I think it was 2019 was the last time that it was. We're not going to let that happen again, a delay on that. I'll jump ahead to the next piece when I mentioned that the component of the next piece of legislation that I'm going to talk about is that there's a requirement now that Safety Committee is going to review this document by no later of March each calendar year. So we'll never have a gap like that again because we're going to mandate that it has to be reviewed on a yearly basis and also continuing basis should something come up. So again, thank you for all the personnel that worked to put this together. It was much needed and it's a much improved document.
I appreciate you taking 3 reads on it so the public understands it. Any further discussion from our colleagues? Seeing none, Mrs. Ross Marin, the roll.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. This is passed. Mrs. Ross Marin, read by ordinance title only, ordinance number 25-36.
An ordinance amending codified ordinance section 238.01, Community Disaster Plan.
Mr. Cos,
Thank you. I move for passage of ordinance number 25-36.
in discussion?
As just mentioned, this is the companion piece to the City of Avon Lake Disaster Plan. Changes the name of this from the Community Disaster Plan to the City of Avon Lake Disaster Plan, and also puts a mandate in there that the city and the Safety Committee will review this on a yearly basis, but that does not prohibit reviews or recommendations for changes should a situation come up. So we had to change the ordinance to update it along with the disaster plan, and that's what this piece of legislation is.
Thank you. Any further discussion from our colleagues? Seeing none, Mrs. Ross Marin, the roll.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you, this is passed. Mrs. Rossmarin, read resolution number 25-40 by title only.
A resolution of the City Council of the City of Avon Lake adopting Vision Zero and the Lorraine County Comprehensive Safety Action Plan.
Mr. Koss,
Thank you. I move for passage of resolution number 25-40.
in discussion.
In discussion, this is an item that was brought to the Public Safety and Health Committee meeting a couple of months ago. And what this does is this allows the City of Avon Lake to join with the other communities in Lorraine County to adopt the Lorraine County Comprehensive Safety Action Plan. And it's comprehensive. This is a thick document with a lot of good information in it. And also the Vision Zero program. Now, what that Vision Zero program is, it's going to allow, by adopting this with the other communities in Avon Lake, it's going to allow the City of Avon Lake, through the direction and in cooperation with the public health, with the Lorraine County Public Health Department, to apply for funds and grants from the federal government that they're going to be making available. The first round of this is only going to be $160,000 that the city would be able to apply for projects. But as time goes on, an additional $1.3 million will be available, and then an additional $500,000 will be available. And this is going to be for funding for traffic control devices, for safety improvements, for engineering studies, for planning and surveys similar to what we're doing with the traffic study over on Lear, similar to projects like that. We can apply for funding for some of this through this Vision Zero project. And the goal on Vision Zero is to have zero motor vehicle accidents, or deaths, I should say, by 2040. It's a lofty goal, but I admire that they put a date on it and they want to try to work towards that. So by passing this tonight, we'll be joining the rest of the county under the direction of the Public Health Department, and we'll be able to apply for funds for some of these safety projects. And I want to thank Kelly LaRosa here in the city for all of the work that she did on this. She really helped put this whole thing together. And Mrs. Rossmarin, should this pass here in a moment, would you be able to get this information to Kelly? Because I think she has to report it to Director Adams at the Health Department. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. Any further discussion on this particular topic? And Mr. Koss, did you mention that 108 people in Lorraine County lost their lives to traffic deaths between 2018 and 2022?
That sounds about right, sadly.
Okay. And
Yes.
according to the Lorraine County Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, pedestrians and bicyclists are involved in 1.4% of all Lorraine County crashes, 10.9% of fatal and serious injury crashes in Lorraine County. Thank you for bringing this project forward. May we have a roll call, Mrs. Rossmarin?
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Now we're at second readings. Mrs. Rossmarin, read by title only, ordinance number 25-52.
An ordinance authorizing a donation to village project and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Zuber,
I move the second reading of ordinance number 2552.
discussion.
This is a donation to the village project, which helps out needy families that a member of the family has cancer. They bring meals to those families. This covers Avon Lake, Avon, Westlake, and Bay Village. We'll be bringing this back either the 28th or the first meeting in May for passage.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for Mr. Zuber? Seeing none, then we're going to move forward to ordinance number 25-59. Mrs. Rossmarin, read by title only.
An ordinance adopting a job description for the position of city engineer, establishing the qualifications and duties for said position, and repealing ordinance number 188-90.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
Thank you. I move for the suspension of the council rule requiring 3 readings.
Mrs. Rossmarin, read the roll.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes?
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you. It is
Yes.
passed. Mr. Smith?
Thank you. This is establishing,
I move for,
I move for passage.
thank you. In discussion?
Yeah, this is establishing basically the job description for the city engineer that hopefully we'll be looking to hire one here sooner than later, something I've wanted to see happen. This is not as an emergency, so it'll go into effect as early as time allowed by law. Thank you.
Thank you. And time allows by law is 30 days after the signature of the mayor and council president, if this should pass. Mrs. Rossmarin, the roll?
No,
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I have your hand's up?
Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mrs. Gentry.
I would like to see a candidate that has a project management professional certification, because I think that project management skills are very important for this role. And I'd like to see that as, if it's not within the job description, I think it needs to be seriously considered.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, we're looking at the job description right now. Before we move forward. It talks around it, but it does not talk about the certification. Certification licenses, registration as a professional engineer in the state of Ohio, valid Ohio driver's license or ID. So that's a recommendation by Ms. Gentry. Any further discussion by anyone? Yes, sir, Mr. Zuber?
yeah, I think you can see the last time we had an engineer is that we updated the ordinance. The job description was from 1990. So I think that we all have pushed forward to try and get an engineer on staff. I think it's critical for all of us, and the quicker that we move on this, the better.
Thank you, sir. Any further discussion? Mr. Cos?
Yeah, thank you. The certifications and licenses just pointed out that those are the minimum qualifications on there. So to what Ms. Gentry is saying, it could definitely be considered in a candidate. This is just the minimum qualifications.
Any further discussion? Yeah, I too agree with Ms. Gentry that project management certifications today is so necessary. It wasn't something that might have been needed back in 1990 because they probably didn't have the software to support it at that point in time. They probably also didn't have the certification programs to support it at that time. And I believe that Ms. Gentry and Mr. Shamir both have project management certifications under their belts, and they're shaking their heads in agreement over here. Any further discussion? Because I think we're all in support of moving forward quickly. Mrs. Rossmarin, the roll.
Mr. Zuber?
Yes.
Mrs. Fenderbosh?
Yes.
Ms. Gentry?
Yes.
Mr. Koss,
Yes.
Mr. Shamir?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. This is passed. Mrs. Rossmarin, read by title only, or